Stanley Ford, case number CR 2017-06-1953. Present in the courtroom is Mr. Ford, represented by counsel Mr. Gorman and Mr. Riley. On behalf of the state of Ohio, our prosecutors LaPrinzi and D'Angelo. It is Monday, the 13th of September. We are proceeding with testimony, but before we begin, I want to place on the record the steps that we have taken regarding the current mask mandates, as well as any executive or administrative orders issued by the administrative judge of the Summit County Common Pleas Court. The 12 jurors seated in the jury box are all wearing masks at all times. They are separated between them with plexiglass, and in front of them is plexiglass. All participants are wearing masks unless and until they are speaking. That means the attorneys, when doing questioning, may actually remove their masks. Witnesses are being seated after being sworn and then instructed to remove their masks. Mr. Ford is masked, and we will address that in 1 second. But I believe that these steps that we've agreed upon prior to the start of trial are also appropriate with regards to Mr. Ford's constitutional rights to cross-examination of his accusers and to confront those accusers, as well as his due process rights to a fair trial. And gentlemen, have I accurately, and in addition, the witness chair is disinfected in between each witness. Gentlemen, have I accurately depicted our procedure?
You have, as far as safety.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman.
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Mr. Ford, good morning. You again know, I've told you this every morning, that you have a right as the accused not to wear a mask. If you want to wear a face shield, you may do so. You may go without a mask with a face shield, or you may wear the white cloth mask that you're currently wearing. Do you understand those rights?
I do, Your Honor.
And you choose to wear that white mask, is that correct?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ford. I also want to make one other thing clear on the record, because we talked about how I approved these photographs of the decedents in both fires, both at 719 and 693 Fultz. In the previously I'd ruled them. And so I just want to make it clear that I went over, and I think I've done this a couple times, but I want to make sure that it's clear that I've gone and I've reviewed those photographs, and I find, though, while any photograph of a decedent or a dead individual could in itself be inflammatory and or prejudicial, I find that the probative value of those photographs outweigh any prejudicial effect. Last week, prior to the testimony of, is it Lieutenant Weber or Horner? Either one, both of them. There was an objection by the defense as to the number of times the picture of the decedents at 693 Fultz were going to be showed. We started going through them. Even though I had previously approved of them, I wanted to know how many times they were going to be shown. While Mr. LaPrinzi was arguing the facts and who was going to testify and how they were going to testify, Mr. Gorman raised his hand and indicated that they no longer had any problem with that concept. So I wanted to make that clear. I wasn't sure that that was on the record, but after we left on Friday, I realized that I needed to clear up that issue. Okay. That all being said, I believe we have everybody?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Yes, Mr. Mr. Gorman.
I raised my hand saying, since you had already ruled, we weren't going to stop him at the moment.
Okay.
I want to make that clear.
All right. I mean, I know you were objecting in generalities, but then I think what you were, okay. And so the record is clear that Mr. Gorman said that they were okay with not objecting while the testimony was going on, but that their objection was noted for the record. Okay, Mr. Riley.
Good morning, ma'am. This is Court Scott Riley and Joe Gorman on behalf of Stanley Ford. At this time, is open to all prior motions, but not limited to our opposition to the joinder in this matter and our motion for severance. Additionally, Judge, there's 3 items that...
Let me roll on that first. That has previously been... so your renewed objection is overruled. I've previously ruled on those issues in writing. And okay, go ahead. What else?
This morning, I believe we're going to have some testimony regarding videos taken from Mr. Chester Williams' house regarding the 2017 fire. So we're renewing our opposition, our motion to eliminate that we had filed some time ago regarding the hash value issue between the original hard drive from Chester Williams and the forensic copy or forensic image taken by the Akron Police Department and then forward down to the Ohio State Fire Marshal. So we're going to renew that motion as if we fully litigated it here at this time.
Yeah, based on my previous rulings, that motion is overruled.
Secondly, as it relates to the videos, I've reviewed the PDF slideshow that I believe the prosecutor is going to try to introduce through Mr. Barkhurst. And our objection to that, in certain slides, Mr. Barkhurst opines and makes statements on the slideshow indicating what he saw in the video. We believe that the video is obviously the best evidence and it speaks for itself. We don't believe that he should be allowed in his slideshow to tell the jury what it is that they see. Specifically in slide number, the important ones are slides 99 and 101. 99 talks about a door opens, and 101 he writes a door closes. In 111 he talks about...
Hold on, 99, right?
99.
Yep.
101.
Okay.
111 he writes an individual is visible. 110 he writes door open. Slide 112 door closed. Slide 129 door open. Slide 130 door closed. And then slide 136, also door open. In the vast majority of his slides, he writes movement visible. And I think the distinction between the two is important. I don't think he can say movement's visible, but I don't think he can explain to the jury what it is that he sees that they should see.
99.
That's not 99.
Yeah, I was at 99. I'm just scrolling through. Judge, do you want me to keep going?
Which one do you want to see, Judge?
I want to start at 99.
Put it at 99.
So it's in his
Yeah,
dialogue at the bottom.
movement invisible, okay.
You don't want to...
I mean, so wait a second.
So
is
okay,
this, no, hold on though, is this one quiet? Well, I mean, I realize these are the slides, he's gonna talk about those. But the video part of it, is it like the last one where there's there's no voiceover or anything?
I was going to say, yeah, the video does not
Okay.
contain any of this information. The video
These
does
are
contain-
these are the snapshots of the video that he's going to testify to, similar to how he testified regarding 719, I'm assuming 719, right? Full?
Yes.
Okay.
The only audio in the video is the overlay of the 911.
Okay, so, all right, so movement visible there, then what?
So
So next one is-
I wrote 99 just to show that
Start.
that's okay.
Right.
But if you go to like 101, door closed.
Okay,
So we object to that.
I understand. So it's just the captions, I
Correct.
shouldn't say just, but it's the captions that you're objecting to.
Correct.
Okay.
In simplistic terms, Judge, he is replacing the fact finder, which is the jury, with him.
Right. I understand.
Just before we rule on this,
I haven't ruled yet, but go
I
ahead.
just want to make sure that, so just as he testified, that's a white truck going down the street, there are certain things that he made observations of as the person who was reviewing the video to pull out things of relevance. And so if you wanted to testify that I believe this to be a door opening and that was significant to me, so I pulled that out and put this in the slideshow, and we want to couch it in the terms of I believed it to be. Because otherwise we're just going to say, well, that movement, why did you think it was significant? Is he not allowed to say that I thought it was a door?
Right.
So that's kind of where we're...
Okay, so, anything further? Anything further?
No, Mr. Cormier.
I mean, in some slides he does it properly, in other slides he doesn't. And Judge, we can talk about a car that's like a big pink elephant in the room, everyone knows it's a car going down the street. But when we're talking about the seminal issue in this case,
Right.
for him to tell the jury what they're seeing is improper and unfair.
Alrighty. So, I will indicate that upon the proper foundation of, now I'm not saying you have to ask it every single question, but maybe the way you approach this is you lay that foundation before you start, that these are his observations. And then I'm going to give the jury a curative instruction as that those are his observations, you're going to review the evidence, and you're going to make the decision based on being the trier of fact.
Judge,
Yes,
it needs to also say then that he is not an expert in identifying individuals. That's not his job. So he doesn't bring anything more to the table than a juror looking at the video and making
Right.
a determination for themselves.
Judge,
Right.
we would ask that you not state that to the jury. He is never, ever going to say that's Stanley Ford.
right,
And that's like saying to every witness, you know, they're not an expert in, you know, testifying as to what they saw.
right. I'm gonna,
It's not his expertise.
It doesn't matter, so what?
but if he doesn't say that that's Stanley Ford, then I'm not gonna instruct them that
Right,
he's not an
exactly.
expert in identification.
And I would understand if he said that.
All right, we'll just object for the record.
That's fine. All right, so, Mr. Gorman, Mr. D'Angelo, got my Joes confused for a minute. Just subject to the proper foundation. And so what I'm gonna ask you to do is lay it prior to him going into it so that you don't have to do it on every single, slide. And then your objection is noted now, overruled, and then you can renew it at the start of his testimony, and I'll consider it as an ongoing objection.
Thank you.
And I'll reiterate that on the record after his testimony also. All right? Yes?
I understand your rule.
Okay, no, I'm saying, if you want then to come sidebar to renew it, we can do it at that before and after. Okay?
Yes.
Anything else? One more?
Third thing is, I believe the state at some point in time today is going to try to introduce two videos, one from 2016 and one from 2017, where they do a split screen of Mr. Ford walking with the Akron Police Department. I believe it was the day the search warrant might have been conducted, and then superimposing on the split screen image of the unidentified person in both the 2016 and the 2017 fires, and somehow going to make an argument that the jury can determine that the two videos match and the person has the same gait. And we obviously object to showing the jury that sort of evidence, because we don't believe that there's any proper foundation that's been established. The state of Ohio, through the Akron Police Department, during the course of its investigation, and we have an email confirming that they attempted to go out and find a gait expert to make a determination like that. And obviously we've received no report, and I don't believe that they have any gait expert. I've also have somewhere in my possession a manual that talks about, for physical therapy, what it is, the components of gait and gait analysis, observational gait analysis. And there are many components to the gait analysis. So I believe by showing those side by side and letting the jury come to whatever conclusion is lacks in foundation, lacks in science, and should not be permitted.
Is this coming in under Barkhurst again?
So, Mr. Barkhurst, Your Honor, will be authenticating the videos. We are not planning on playing them today through Mr. Barkhurst. He's only going to testify that he made the 3 videos that we are later planning on presenting to the detective.
Mr. Prinzi, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, so this is just like if we had a video of the guy at the ATM, we could, what they're suggesting is we can't show the picture of the ATM to the jury, and with a picture of him at the time of the arrest, it's for them to make the identification. There's clear law, even as to forgeries. Jurors can make common sense decisions as to whether handwriting examples match. We don't have to have a gait analysis or an expert to do that. The gait expert we looked at, because they can at times, if you have enough footage, can make a comparison and make a more confirmation or confirmative opinion about whether it's him or not. Scientifically, it's based on mechanics and movement, things of that nature. But the gait analysis experts that we talked to said there wasn't enough video for them to make any kind of opinion with certainty. And so basically after that, he's just coming in making a non-scientific opinion, and the jurors are allowed to do that.
All right, when's Mr. Barkhurst testifying?
He's testifying at 10 o'clock today, Judge.
All right, and so, are you going to show, pardon me?
No. I said hopefully he's testifying.
So you're not going to show them, you're just going to have him authenticate the videos, so you're not even going to show them today?
No, we were planning on showing them through Detective Lee's
Okay,
testimony.
so I'm going to hold off my ruling. Once he authenticates them, I will then, we'll, on a break or at the end of today, we'll view them, and then we'll have additional arguments if necessary.
Judge,
Yes,
And then for the record, I'm just going to mark defendant's F as the letter from Troy Looney asking for the gate analysis expert, and defendant's G, which is the gate observational analysis.
thank you for your extensive research, Mr. Riley. Those will be marked as defense exhibits.
And
that
Judge,
was excellent.
when,
They are excellent.
when Mr. Parkhurst arrives, we'll make sure that we take a break so that we can discuss with him the issue that you ruled on
Yes.
as far as,
Mhm.
you know, how we're going to do that so he knows not to make any.
So is it my understanding you have Gump in French first and then, okay,
Yes.
sure.
And the only other housekeeping issue is Mr. D'Angelo sent us an email over the weekend talking about bringing in another witness to authenticate jail phone calls. I've indicated to Mr. D'Angelo, the prosecution, that we're likely to stipulate to that because there might be some phone calls we may need later on in the course of this proceeding. So I think we're all in agreement that they are definitely normal course of business with some county sheriff's department.
All right.
Thank you.
So when appropriate, we'll enter those stipulations. So wait, F and G, is that what?
Yes, ma'am.
F is the letter and G is the gate analysis, whatever.
Gate observational analysis.
It was close. Okay, and for the record, I am not sick, so I just want everyone to know that, even though I sound like I'm sick. All right, anything else? Hearing none, we'll bring the jury in. No, this is me yelling at the television.
Summit County Court of Common Pleas is now in session. The Honorable Christine Kirchner presiding.
Thank you, may be seated. Welcome, everyone. I'll start by telling you I'm not sick. This is what happens after Ohio football weekend. So by a show of hands, I just want to verify that everybody has complied with my previous admonitions and followed them. Yes? I see 17 hands, thank you. All right, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state of Ohio would call Detective Daniel Gump.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Go ahead and have a seat. Once you're seated, if you'll remove your mask, keep your voice up and speak into the microphone, please.
Good morning, sir. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury by stating your first name and spelling your last name for the record, please?
Dan Gump, G-U-M-P,
Can you tell the jury where you're employed?
City of Akron Police Department.
And what do you do for them?
Currently work in the crime scene division.
Okay, are you a police officer?
I am.
Detective Gump, can you please move the video screen? Could you just push it back a little bit? That way. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Thank you very much. And you're a police officer?
Correct.
How long have you been a police officer?
28 years.
All with the Akron Police Department?
Yes.
And what unit or division are you assigned to?
The crime scene division.
Okay. And how long have you been a crime scene unit officer or detective?
Since 2015.
What other divisions of the Akron Police Department have you been assigned to?
Uniform patrol, 6 years in patrol, and then 15 or so in the traffic division.
Did you undergo any specialized training that enabled you to become a crime scene unit detective?
Yes, when you bid for the job, they send you to about 8 or so weeks of training.
What types of training? Like what types of things do you learn?
Photography, a couple weeks of photography, fingerprint, latent examination, evidence technician, collecting, how to preserve it, forensic aspects of death, learning about decomposed bodies, a couple other ones.
Okay. And did you undergo any specific training in regards to DVR examination, downloading, things like that?
No official training, just on-the-job training.
Okay. And so describe that on-the-job training. What do you mean by that?
When I came to the crime scene unit in 2015, Sergeant Wren was my sergeant at the time, and he pretty much showed me how to download what he knew as far as the DVRs, and they're all different, so it's just you're constantly learning.
So a DVR unit, they vary.
Correct,
from, I'm assuming, unit to unit, right?
correct.
And have you done that before? Have you downloaded DVR systems before?
Since today or since then?
Since then, I mean,
When I first came to the unit, the crime scene division, I had downloaded none.
and then since then,
Many.
okay. All right, I'd like to draw your attention to May 15th, or around that time period, May 16th of 2017. Do you recall that time?
Yes,
Were you working in your capacity as a crime scene unit detective for the Akron Police Department at that time period?
yes.
And did you have a chance to respond to 714 Fultz Avenue, or the area of Fultz Avenue in the city of Akron on that date?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury why?
I believe on the 15th, I was called, I was working with Detective Kelly Johnson, and we were summoned to the scene by, at the time, Sergeant Litke, he's a lieutenant now, to recover video.
Okay, and from where?
714 Folds.
Okay, there were cameras on that residence?
Correct.
And so what were you specifically going to do when you were made that assignment?
I believe Sergeant Litke called in. We responded to the scene, I believe just before 6 a.m. And I met up with him on the street, and he pretty much pointed me to 714, meet with the homeowner. He's expecting you, and he wanted the times of midnight to 3 a.m.
Okay, and when you, after you received those instructions, did you go to 714 Fultz?
I did.
And who did you meet with?
Mr. Chester Williams.
Okay, and he was the homeowner?
Correct.
When you, after you met with him, did you specifically have a chance to look at his system, his DVR system?
Yes.
And what did you notice there initially about the times?
Initially, I didn't notice it, but when I started downloading the requested times that Sergeant Litke wanted, after I downloaded it, I realized it was 4 hours off.
Okay. You realized the system was 4 hours off from the correct time.
Correct.
And how did you note that? How did you figure that out?
I believe at the time, usually if I know I'm getting video from a scene, sometimes you don't know until you're doing other things. But I believe I took my laptop with me, so once I downloaded the time, you try to verify that you got the video and it's playable. And I believe I noticed from the start that I noticed fire trucks and stuff were in the scene, so that dawned on me. It was a rookie mistake, but I didn't verify the times prior to downloading it, so I just realized the time difference and then restarted my time accordingly.
And what were the times that Detective Litke or Sergeant Litke asked you to get?
He requested midnight to 3 a.m.
Okay. After you had learned that the times were off, did you begin to download from the DVR?
Correct.
And how did you do that? Describe that to the jury.
So the DVR, you go to a box with a hard drive, and it's got a mouse. So you just get into the system, find the main menu, and it says various things. Sometimes backup, save, or what have you. So you find what the menu says to save to back up the footage. So you go there, and then it'll usually give you a date to select, and then a time frame. So when to when, and then most of them have a couple USB ports. Some have a couple in the back, front, and then you just put a flash drive in it, and then just download it to a flash drive.
And were you able to do that?
Correct.
Were there any issues while you were downloading it?
No.
Okay. Detective Gump, I'm showing you first a document that's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 135. Can you please take a minute to look at that and let me know when you're finished? And Detective Gump, I know you didn't include the writing on the top of this document, but do you recognize the photograph in this document?
I do.
Okay, and we're going to go over it more in-depthly, but can you very generally tell the jury what it is, that photograph that you see in this document?
Generally, you like to, when there's a time discrepancy, include something to verify what it is, and then I'm not good at math, so if the next guy can figure it out better than me, so I put my cell phone up in front of whatever system it is, and hopefully it has a clock on it, which this one did. It would show the actual time compared to what I call the DVR time.
Okay. Next, I'm going to show you two exhibits. They're marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 131 and 132. Can you please take a minute to look at these and let me know when you're finished?
Okay.
All right, and let's start with State's Exhibit 131. Can you tell the jury what this is?
131 is a packet of 4 DVDs that I downloaded from the USB drive to the DVDs from the times that I requested.
Okay, and then packet number 2, can you tell us about this?
Now, another 4 CDs, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all with that time frame.
Okay. Now, there's 4 cameras on 714 Fultz. We've heard testimony about that, but can you tell us why there are 8 discs?
It's each disc, I forget what a DVD holds, maybe close to 8 gigabytes, if I know my memory, could be half of that. So whatever it would fit on each disc, and to get it all on from that time frame that I picked, the initial time frame.
And on the document camera next to you, you can turn it a little bit there.
It's on a swivel.
It's on a swivel, yeah.
Yep.
And that's State's Exhibit 135 that you previously identified. You recognize this as being your phone?
Correct.
Okay, and then this is the computer screen here?
Yes.
Okay.
What number did you say?
135. Now, after you had downloaded the video from 714 Fultz, that hard drive there, can you tell the jury what happened next, and did you have to go back to 714 Fultz?
I did have to go back later in the week, so I went back with the requested time frames of midnight to 3, and then as the investigator, I compliment the detective bureau, so whatever they need me to do or follow up with, I do what they tell me to do. So I did have to go back later in the week for the more video.
And do you know when that was?
I believe it was Friday, the 19th of May.
And when you went back to 714 Fultz, tell the jury what you did.
So for that particular time, I believe it was Lieutenant Whidden requested the entire day before the 15th, the 14th. So he wanted all of the 14th. So we began downloading myself, Detective French, and at the time Sergeant Wren started downloading the 14th.
Okay. And how did you do that physically? Did you do that there at 714, or where'd you go?
So we started, when you want a big chunk of video and you're doing it that process with the flash drive, it takes a while. Some systems are a little bit quicker, some are slower. So it was taking a while. Obviously, that was a full day of video. So we began downloading the cameras one by one, and it was taking longer than expected. We left and came back, and then we didn't want to physically take the hard drive at that point and leave the homeowner without, his video system. So I'm not sure what the time frame was, but I believe the state fire marshal person wanted the physical hard drive at some point in time.
Okay, so what did you do when that request was made?
So we're getting late into Friday daytime, and like I said, we didn't want to leave him without a system, and I think it was Friday that Sergeant Wren and Detective French took the hard drive inside the DVR and flashed it, made a copy of it, so that the fire marshal could have a copy of it.
Okay, so you actually took the actual DVR system from 714?
I believe Sergeant Wren, took it back, and they do the computer. They're the computer guys that do the at the time.
And what did you give back to Mr. Williams there at 714 Fultz?
So I believe on Friday the hard drive came back. We got it hooked back up, and then for some reason I can't remember why somebody wanted something for Saturday, so we go back Saturday. So we just purchased another DVR, same make and model, and installed that one at his house, and then we physically kept the actual DVR from his house.
Detective Gump, I'm showing you a package that's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 129. Can you please take a minute to look at that and let me know when you're finished?
Okay.
Can you tell the jury what this is, State's Exhibit 129?
This is the actual DVR, the Swan DVR camera system from Mr. Williams' house that I packaged and tagged into it.
Okay, so you physically took that DVR system, packaged it in this package?
Correct.
Now, Detective Gump, at some point, did you look at the DVR and do something with the times on the DVR system?
Yes, the initial day on the 15th, that I was just getting the initial times that Sergeant Lickey requested. In the course of downloading, you're talking to the homeowner, and he had mentioned, we talked about times being off, and I believe there was some kind of electrical issue that changed his times, and it jinked it up. And I told him, I said, I can fix your times if you'd like, and he agreed to it. So I changed his times to the correct time.
Detective Gump, I'm showing you two documents that have been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 136, excuse me, and 138. Can you please take a minute to look at those documents?
Okay.
Okay. Do you see photographs in these two exhibits, 136 and 137?
Correct.
And Detective Gump, do you see an individual in those photographs?
Yes.
And do you recognize that individual?
A little bit heavier than what I expected, but it looks like me.
Okay.
137 or 138?
136 and 138. I'm not doing 137.
You identified as 137.
Oh, I'm sorry. So these, just for the record, so it's clear, This is State's Exhibit 136, where you said in this photograph you recognize yourself.
Correct.
Okay. And this is State's Exhibit 138, where once again you testified in this photograph you recognize yourself.
Correct.
Okay. And it appears you're coming and going, right, in these two photos?
Yes.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Riley?
Good morning, Detective Gump.
Morning.
You know, I'm Scott Riley. You know, that's Joe Gorman. You know, we represent Stanley Ford, right?
Correct.
You and I have spoke before, correct?
I believe so.
All right. So, just so I'm clear on the time frame, your first attempt to download video from 714 Fultz was stopped because you realized you were downloading the wrong time frame, correct?
I don't recall if I stopped it or if it just went ahead and did its thing, and then when I went to verify that I got everything, then I probably realized it's off.
Did you make that realization at the scene, or had you already been back to?
At the scene.
Okay, so you didn't go back to the station and then realize and then come back out, correct?
Correct.
So then your second attempt was a copy of the hard drive to a flash drive, correct?
Correct.
And then you took that flash drive copy and made a copy to the disks that were already identified today, I believe as
31 and 32.
131 and 132, correct?
Correct.
So 131 and 132 are a copy of the original, correct?
Correct.
And there were no hash values assigned to the copy of the original, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you and I have spoke about hash values before, correct?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
It wasn't. Yeah.
All right. Hash value, some people have described it in this court already as a sort of a digital fingerprint of a file, correct?
That's what I believe it to be.
Right. And because when you're downloading, you're not downloading actual pictures, you're just downloading data, correct?
Correct.
And the data in computer language is all a bunch of ones and zeros, correct?
Correct.
And the hash value tells you that the image, if you will, the file that you're downloading is identical to the file from the hard drive, correct?
Correct.
It's a computer mathematical algorithm that's generated, right?
I have no formal training on it, so I can't testify to that one.
All right. But that wasn't done for the flash drive or the copies of the flash drive, correct?
No.
Your third attempt, I believe, was then the very next day?
If we're calling the third attempt for the 14th, the day before, would have been Friday,
The 19th?
the 19th. That would have been technically my third attempt.
So you were out there the first time, the first two times, right? The first attempt was the wrong time and the second attempt was the corrected time, correct?
Yeah, it was still, I was there, I never left. But I did the wrong times and then I did the correct times.
And the date of that was the day of the fire?
Correct, 15th.
So the fire was at the early morning AM hours. You were there sometime during the afternoon of the 15th, correct?
At 5:43, so 5 in the morning, 43 minutes after. So I was there. My shift at that time was midnight, so I forget forget what time we get off, 7 o'clock at the time, but yeah, we were summoned to the scene at 5:40 something in the morning. So I was there around 6 a.m.
So 4 days later, you're back out at the scene, correct?
on the 19th.
And again, during that, what I'm calling the third attempt, is another download to a flash drive, correct?
Correct.
And that was taking too much time because it was all the footage from the day before, correct?
Correct.
And was that then aborted, or did you save that information?
Just save that information.
But then you decided it was taking too much time, correct?
Between too much time and the state fire marshal wanting a copy of the DVR. So at some point in time, I don't know if it was Friday, somebody got a call, and that's when they flashed it, Sergeant Wren and Detective French.
All right. So while the download was occurring on the third attempt, you actually had left Mr. Williams' house and then came back?
Correct.
All right. And then at that time you decided to just take the whole unit, correct?
Prior to sundown on Friday, the May 5th, or May 19th, we took the unit and got it back before sundown.
So on May 19th, you attempt to download, it's taking too long, then you take the entire unit with you, correct, back to the police station.
Correct.
You do something there, correct?
Sergeant Wren, I believe, did.
And then you take the whole machine back the evening of the 19th to Mr. Williams' house, correct?
Correct.
And then you make a fifth attempt where you go out and actually take the whole hard drive. Am I right about that?
I don't know what attempt it was, but on the next day, the 20th, which was a Saturday, because we had something downloading overnight. I was still trying to give Lieutenant Ridden's request of the 14th, so I'm still working on that one, while we're still trying to assist the state fire marshal's request of having the whole hard drive. So I believe we had something downloading overnight the 19th, and that's why we went back on the 20th, Friday or Saturday, and then decided, by then I just purchased another one, instead of keep coming and going, and put the new one Saturday morning. We installed a new hard drive, and that's when I took that hard drive to a station.
And then does that terminate your involvement with the DVR at Chester Williams' house as it relates to this fire?
Correct.
And you never examined any other DVR, such as one from 730 volts, correct?
Correct.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. D'Angelo?
1 second, Judge. Detective Gump, that second time that you had downloaded the footage, I believe you said it was in response to Lieutenant Whitten's request for a longer time period. You recall that part of your testimony cross-examination?
Correct.
Okay. Those discs, are those in evidence?
Correct.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Judge.
Thank you. You may step down. Thank you. You can call the next witness.
Thank you, Judge. We call Brian French.
Do you solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat. Once you're seated, if you'll remove your mask and then keep your voice up and speak into the microphone.
Sir, if you would, please introduce yourself to everyone by telling us your full name and then spell your last name for the court reporter, please.
Yeah, it's Brian French, French.
And sir, how are you employed?
I'm a policeman for the city of Akron,
How long have you been with Akron Police Department?
roughly 19 and a half years.
And prior to that, did you have any prior military or law enforcement experience?
No, I did not.
And we've had a lot of testimony from other officers. I'm assuming, well, I should ask about training. Did you go through the training required to become an Akron police officer?
Yes, I did.
And did you go through the Akron Academy?
Yes, through the city of Akron's police department.
And is that a 16 weeks?
It's like a 6-month process.
All right, 6 months. And you received your OPATA certification?
I did.
And have you maintained that certification to this date?
Correct.
What is your current assignment?
I'm a computer forensic specialist.
And prior to that, what kind of jobs did you hold within the police department?
I did a lot of work in patrol. I was a school resource officer. I was on the SWAT team.
All right, and at one point in time, were you in a drug unit?
No, I was not.
Okay. And then, how long have you been in the current assignment?
A little over 4 years.
And so your assignment started when?
May 1st of 2017.
So two weeks before this incident on May 15th, 2017.
Correct.
Okay. Is that an assignment, a bid assignment?
It's an exempt assignment. So essentially, you type a letter of intent and you interview for the job, and then you get selected.
All right. So it's not a bid assignment would be one that is done just by seniority.
Correct.
And this is not one of those.
Correct.
You had to apply, submit, and be interviewed.
Yes.
And you did do that, and you got this job.
Correct.
And please describe for us what this current job that you got on May 1st, 2017 entails.
We're basically in charge of digital evidence. So we get digital evidence from cell phones, computers, some DVR systems, thumb drives, you name it.
All right. And in order to hold that position, did you have to have some type of training, specific training?
Initially, no. Currently, yes.
All right. So when you took the job, there was no specific training that was required of you. Was it on-the-job training?
So initially, you bid for the job, and then as you get the job, you're going to take the classes for to get the certifications for the training.
Okay. And this job, there's another person in this unit. Is that fair?
Yes.
And well, I should ask you, currently, how many people are in the unit?
2.
And at that time, it was 2 also?
Correct.
And the other person that was in that unit at the time with you when you first started was who?
Lieutenant Wren. Well, let me backtrack. Lieutenant Wren just got promoted. My boss, Sergeant Sheffield, was away in training. And during that transition period, Lieutenant Wren stayed in the computer forensic unit until Sergeant Sheffield came back from training.
Right.
So there's still 2 people, but he was just waiting for his bid process to take forth.
Okay. And so Lieutenant Wren and you, is it fair to say, worked together on this case?
Yes.
All right. In regards to the specific case, a fire that took place on May 15, 2017 on Fultz, what was your involvement?
I downloaded a phone that was in the fire on the 17th, and I imaged a hard drive from 714 Fultz.
All right. And would that be the extent of your involvement in this case?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about the phone. You received a phone from evidence or where?
Yes, from evidence.
All right. I'm going to show you what I've marked as State's Exhibit 133 for identification. May I approach it?
You may.
Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's the ZTE phone that was in the fire on Full Street.
All right. And how do you recognize that this is the one that you analyzed?
I reviewed the picture before court.
Okay. And also on the tag, on the evidence tag, does it indicate your name on it?
No,
Okay. And why would it not necessarily have your name on it?
because I didn't collect the phone.
Okay. So Lieutenant Todd Webb is on this, is that fair?
Yes,
And so that would have been put into the Akron Police property room or the Akron Fire Department property room, one of the two, fair?
it would have been put in our property room.
All right, and then do you actually go and retrieve it from there?
Yes,
And then you take it to your office, I guess, space and work on it there?
correct.
And then when you're done, you seal it and put it back?
Yes,
And was that done in this case?
yes it was.
And you said I think you said it was May 17th, 2017 is when you analyzed this phone?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
We use a software program called Celebrate. It's called a UFED Touch. So it's a universal forensic extraction device. That's where the UFED comes in handy. And you basically would plug in the phone into this device, hit a couple different buttons to allow it to communicate back and forth. And then basically the machine is going to say, hey, give me the text messages. The phone's going to give the text message to Celebrate. Because in this case, I did a logical exam, which it basically means that what's on the device is what we're going to get, excluding any sort of app data. So we'll get like calls, text messages, like your MMS and your like your media. So like pictures, audio, video, stuff like that.
All right. And when you download this, what form does it come to you in?
So it actually comes out in as data, and then Celebrate decodes that data and puts it in a language that we can actually read and understand.
All right. And when you say data, I think we've had this before, that when it comes in data, it's all ones and zeros?
Yeah, it's in binary form, so it's in ones and zeros.
All right. And then this proprietary program then interprets that and puts it into some form we can read?
Correct.
All right. And was that done in this case?
Yes, it was.
And if you recall, how much information, I guess, or pages of information would this phone have downloaded, if you recall?
I don't recall this phone, but it's usually tens of thousands of pages in a PDF report.
All right. And of course, it depends on how much usage that phone got.
Correct.
And do you know or recall how long this particular phone was in use?
I don't remember.
Okay. For the purposes of the fire on May 15th, was there a couple things that you were actually looking for or found that were, I guess, relevant, so to speak, in your mind to this case?
Yes, we were looking for like recent activity, and in this instance, there was some 911 calls from the device.
All right. And do you recall what those, what time those calls were made?
I do not.
If I were to show you the Celebrate report, would that refresh your recollection?
Yes, it would.
What numbers?
Well, I'm not
Okay.
gonna,
Okay.
I'm just using.
I saw red, I
Yeah.
saw a red sticker.
Oh, you want, you know, show the numbers.
Yeah, there was a 911 call at 2:43.
2:43 a.m.
Correct.
And then, is it what you said that was there was two?
Yes, one was at 2:43 and one was at 2:45.
All right.
And the duration was 0 minutes, so it actually didn't answer.
All right. And were there calls prior to that?
Yes, there was another call to an Ariana at 2:43, and then the earliest one after that would have been at 0040 hours, so detector midnight.
004?
40.
40. So it'd be 12:40 a.m.?
Yeah, 12:40.
Okay. And who would that have been to?
a Jared.
All right, and the names that are on there, in other words, when you download it, if it's just a number, what would that indicate?
So if the contact is entered in properly, it'll show a name associated with that number. So if it's like 330-375-2675 with no dashes, it'll come as a contact. Sometimes when there is no, if the contact isn't entered right, it'll say a value of null.
Okay.
So that wouldn't have a contact.
So if, let's say, she had gotten a call from a
Random number,
yeah,
it would just say null.
okay.
That means it's not in the contact.
In her contacts?
Correct.
All right. So if she enters somebody into a contact and it comes in through there, Celebrite will show who the contact is associated with that number?
Correct.
Okay. And so it starts with the 911 call going in reverse order, the most recent to the backwards, correct?
Yes.
So it's a 911 at 2:45, a 911 call at 2:43,
Correct.
and then a call from Ariana
It was a call to Ariana.
to Ariana.
Correct, at 2:43.
All right, so the same minute, we don't know, does it have the seconds or,
It does not.
okay. And that was to Ariana, and then the one before that,
Was to Jared.
and that was at what time?
It would have been 12:40 a.m.
All right, so there was a gap in between the two.
Correct.
All right. And then prior to that, would there be other calls to Dennis Huggins?
Yes.
All right. And those calls go all the way into the day before, is that fair?
Correct, yeah.
In regards, you said that you had downloaded a DVR?
Yes.
All right. Tell us about that.
So there are some issues with the length of video or time frame. So myself, Detective Gump, and Lieutenant Wren went back to the Fulton Street address and talked to the Chester Williams. There was a DVR system there. So they put a USB drive right in the back of the Swan system, and they attempted to download some more videos. Chester was very adamant that the system would stay there because he was terrified from the recent events in the neighborhood. The recording process was extremely slow, so the decision was to actually take the hard drive out of the DVR during the daytime, take it back to our office, and we were going to image it, and then we were going to bring it back to Chester so he would have something to record tonight's events on. So we went back to the office, we hooked it up to what's called a write blocker, and that basically allows the device to read only, so you can't write back to the device and somehow what we call stomp on that evidence. A couple hours to image it. When we come back to the office, it says that the image was not verified, which means that the hash value was not the same. So a hash value is, it's like a digital fingerprint of all the data on that device. It's very unique because they take a mathematical algorithm and it goes over the data and it gives you unique lettering and numbering of that device. To verify it, you would go over the data again. It should come out with this unique number every time.
All right. Go ahead.
On this date, it did not hash properly. So Lieutenant Wren had called Sergeant Sheffield, who was attending a class, and asked, what should we do? And the decision was to not re-image the device, just to keep the image that we made, and then end the exam at that point.
And what was the concern about re-imaging? So let's go back. So you have your DVR. This is your hard drive with whatever data that collected through the cameras, correct?
Correct.
And then you download that, and then you run a hash
Correct.
value. And that hash value has this fingerprint, so to speak, and it didn't match.
Correct.
Instead of running another one to see if that one matched, what was the concern with doing that?
Well, the concern is the drive on a DVR system is continuously running. you know, a power failure goes out, it stops, it restarts, and it could actually, those start and stopping of the drive could actually damage it or render it not usable. And when you actually image the drive, you're taxing it because it's going from the very beginning to the very end of the drive, and it's duplicating that. The theory was if we tried it again, we could render that drive not usable at all.
Or somewhere in between.
Correct.
So is there any way to quantify, so when you look at that hash value and it's different, is there any way to quantify what the difference is between the one in the original and the copy?
Well, another issue would be that we reinstalled the original drive after we imaged it into Chester Williams's DVR system. So it would never be the same if we re-imaged it anyways. But if you took 2 chunks of data, you could quantify whether or not there's stuff missing. Or if you inserted anything, it would have a footprint of that.
All right. And so when we talk about the hash value, we talked about the amount of, well, let's talk about the amount of data we're talking about. How much data is taken off that DVR?
So it was a 500 gigabyte drive, and I'm not sure, I think it had 4 cameras, and I'm not sure on the length of when that drive would stop and restart writing over the latest video, because technically what it'll do, when that drive gets full, it'll start back at the beginning and overwriting the data that was the latest data or the earliest data.
So it loops.
Correct.
All right. And of course that, if it's a, do you know if this one was a continuous running unit or not?
I do not know.
All right. If it was continuously running, then you would know how long that loop would be, correct?
Correct. You should be able to look at the date and say, hey, it was here January 1st and the last date was, May 17th, even though you have the 4-month buffer.
All right. But if it's a motion sensor, you would not be able to tell.
Well, if that's what you're asking, it was on motion activated. But, if you have more motion, then it's going to be recording more. So it's not going to last as long.
All right. So you said it was 500?
It was 500 gigabytes.
Gigabytes. How many ones and zeros is in 500 gigabytes?
Oh, it's millions.
All right. And when we talk about the hash value not matching, how much difference do we know, or can you tell how much difference between the original and the copy?
You wouldn't be able to tell because it could just be 1 bit that throws off the entire hash. That's what makes it verified or not verified.
And so one of those ones or zeros could be different in the original and the copy, and it would have a different hash value.
Correct.
And likewise, it could be more than that. It could be much more than that, and it would still have a different hash value.
Yeah, if there's any change whatsoever, it will not hash the same value.
All right. So the change in hash value does not tell you how much different it is, if at all, or how much.
Correct.
All right. If you take the video of the original and you take the copy, to the human eye, would you be able to necessarily tell a difference?
Objection.
Overruled, you may answer.
In this video, it's very grainy, so it could just be, a blip in the corner. It could be a pause. It could be anything, or that 1 bit could have flipped in something that we didn't even watch. It could have been from the video in February, or it could have been a bad sector somewhere in the drive that renders it not usable. So, that will change the value of the hash too. So.
All right. And what would it take, if you even could, figure out what the change was?
You'd have to break the videos down and look at the hex values to see if there was any change in that video. But you're talking, a whole day's worth of video, so it would be very time consuming.
All right. And you could just be looking for one pixel on one screen of one video.
Correct.
And then you talked about it being hazy. Would you necessarily even notice it?
No.
You said about a footprint. What tell us about that?
What I mean by that is, like if I were to go in there and edit a video, like it's gonna know that there's a write command on that video. So there would be a notable change in the video.
So like if somebody were to go in and edit it, you would be able to tell that.
Correct.
Was there anything to indicate to you that there was any edits to this video?
No, we were in possession of the video the entire time and it was never edited.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as state certificate number 130. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, this is the box that the hard drive was packaged in when it was packed by myself.
And just so we're thorough, can you open that up and...
So this is going to be the drive that was, I believe, was duplicated.
I'm sorry, is that the original that came from Chester Williams' house?
No, this is the copy of the Swan DVR.
Thank you.
So this is the one that you downloaded that had the different hash value.
Correct.
But this is the one that you used or was used in the processing of this, any video that we used in this case.
Correct.
And actually in this case in 2017.
Yes.
That box has your Akron Police Department evidence tag on it,
Yes.
and that's your name on there, correct?
Correct.
And that's what you put it in and put it into the Akron Police property room.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Mr. Riley?
Good morning, Detective French.
Morning.
You know, I'm Scott Riley. You know that's Joe Gorman. You know we represent Stanley Ford, right?
Correct.
You and I have spoke before, correct?
Yes.
All right. So if I understand your testimony, when you, on the date of this investigation, when it began for you, you had been in the CSU unit for 2 weeks, correct?
Correct.
And I think you said that at that point in time, your training was on-the-job training, correct?
Yes.
So it's fair to say at that point in time, you weren't certified in the forensic examination of these items that we've talked about, correct?
Correct.
You talked about cell phone extractions. Is it safe to say that you only extract information from cell phones when the detectives bring you those cell phones, correct?
Well, they put in basically a sheet of paper to request an extraction. They don't physically bring me the phone, but they put a request into my office, and then we go ahead and get the phones, and then we do our exam, and then we give the data back to that detective.
All right. So you don't initiate the search, is what I'm trying to say. The
Yes.
detective
Correct.
asks you what to perform your job, right?
Correct.
And when you do that, you talked about looking for recent phone calls, correct?
Yes.
You can also, through the extraction process, look for recent text messages or emails if the phone is equipped with an email application, correct?
Yes.
And you can even, through the course of your extraction process, determine if there were text messages that were sent but had been recently deleted, correct?
It depends.
On the phone and the length of time, correct?
It depends on the operating system, the phone, and what type of exam was actually conducted.
Let's talk about the hard drive for a minute if we could. Would you agree that hard drive's fragile, correct?
Yes.
And I think you wrote in your report, one of the first things you did when you received this hard drive in question is put it into an anti-static bag, correct?
Correct.
And an anti-static bag is important because static electricity, while it's enough, to give you a mild little shock, could destroy all the information on a hard drive, correct?
It's possible.
Right. So you took great care to make sure that there was no interference from static electricity with that hard drive that you've identified, I believe, as that was previously identified as Exhibit 129, which was Chester Williams' original hard drive, correct?
This says 130, but
Well, the original hard drive, do you know if that was put into an anti-static bag as well?
so when we removed it from the home, it was put into one of these bags.
Okay. I believe you also said that a decision was made after consulting with your lieutenant and Detective Sheffield not to re-image the original, correct?
Correct.
Because it is possible that you could damage that hard drive, correct?
Yes.
And you could damage the data on that hard drive, correct?
Yes.
We know the hash value of the copy does not match the original, correct?
Correct.
And we know that that means that the copy is not an identical copy of the original, correct?
Correct.
We don't know in what shape or form the difference is, correct?
I'm not sure what your question is.
We don't know how the copy is different from the original.
Correct.
And you can't tell where the failure occurred, correct?
Correct.
And I think you said that you could have gone through and break down each particular video, correct?
Correct.
But that was not done in this case, correct?
Correct.
I have just 1 second, Judge.
You may.
Thank you, Detective. That's all I have.
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you. Detective French,
If we were to take a digital photograph and then download that onto some other medium, thumb drive, whatever, could we do a hash value on that?
Yes.
So of all the thousands of pictures taken in these cases, do you ever do a hash value on them?
Our program automatically will hash every picture.
All right. And then if you take that picture and you download it and then photocopy it on a copier, does that change the photo in some way at all? Or is
No.
it exactly
No, it'd be the same,
be the same?
except it's on paper.
So, but if somebody were to make the original and they make copies so that you can distribute it to other people, nobody's checking those hash values.
Correct.
And so there could be a pixel out of any one of those too. Is that fair?
Sure.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
You may step down. Thank you. Mr. D'Angelo. Mr. Barkerson. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's only been an hour, but the next testimony is probably going to take a little bit of time, and they need to get set up for that testimony. So I'm going to we're going to take our break. So it's 10:20, we'll go till 10:30. Remember the admonition I've given you at all breaks. It's important that you be fair and attentive throughout the trial. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. That includes family, friends, and the media. You must not post or read anything about this case on the internet or any broadcast, including your phone. Any such discussion, if discovered, could lead to a mistrial, which again would severely compromise the party's right to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence, and do not form or express an opinion until the case has finally been submitted to you. Leave your notepads upside down on your chair, and then we'll begin at 10:30.
All rise, please.